Hey everybody, welcome to a very special edition of Reverse the Verse. Now what makes this special is that earlier we had Chief Development Officer Erin Roberts here in the studio. And if you know me, I wasn't about to let an opportunity like that pass me by. So we got Erin to sit down for a few minutes and talk about a whole host of things like the Star Citizen roadmap, the Squadron 42 roadmap. We even dabbled into server meshing, Evocati test flight, plans for 2019, the works. I think it's a pretty good conversation. I hope you enjoy it. And when we're done, we're going to be right back here with members of our lore team to answer your questions live. So enjoy. The public roadmap.
Yes.
We started this process of calling our shots, if you will, like the big Bambino, saying that we were forecasting our releases, months, quarters, even a year ahead. We started this back in 2016. We revamped it last year, and it continues to evolve. We recently added the Squadron 42 roadmap. Looking back at it now, do you think this was the right call?
I actually think it's great. I think it's great putting it out there and everyone can see it. I think the process of us sharing exactly what kind of we would like to do in development, on the development side, compared to actually what gets achieved, is one of those things. And I kind of like the fact that people see that, because what's happening is basically what happens in every company just behind closed doors. And so you set up a very aggressive schedule. You basically work very hard to hit it. Things come along that change stuff in the way and process. You evaluate, you change stuff around because basically you want to go a different direction, and then that of course reassesses the roadmap. So in terms of that kind of stuff, the roadmaps change because you might say, well, actually, we want to do this. We're going to make this feature. We're going to make this feature, and then as we did at the beginning of last year, we looked at this and we sort of said, well, okay, but actually, we want to do these features, but actually want to focus back in on making the game fun, a bit more fun now, because we're trying to get through a bunch of features to deliver to the community. But we knew we needed to get obviously improving the frame rate. We know we need to go and make features we created and maybe go back and spend some more time on to make them enjoyable and fun, to get the better user experience. And so that's some of the stuff we then changed around, and we made a change to do that, which meant that we pushed out some feature work to basically make the experience better. And I actually do feel it was completely the right decision, because if you look at the play experience now compared to a year ago, it's fundamentally different.
Absolutely.
And because of that, that's absolutely the trajectory that we're continuing on. Is we are still focusing on improving the frame rate, on improving and focusing on the gameplay of features we put in. We didn't finish, stability, all that kind of stuff, to really make sure what we have and what's working now. And there's so much stuff you can do already, but making sure that is a great experience, while at the same time then plugging in the features as they come along to basically fit within that.
You mentioned a couple of things I want to unpack a little more. You mentioned that what we put on there versus what actually comes out, because there are some changes, even with all the caveats at the top. You can't access the roadmap without agreeing to the caveats. You also mentioned an aggressive plan. We do plan very aggressively, and a lot of times some features.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest part of that is it comes down to when we make a plan at the beginning of the year, we also include when we believe we're going to get new headcount on and when we can build teams to make that plan work. And so we basically go and we create this roadmap and say, okay, well, right now we have these resources. And then, of course, then you have to take into account, well, actually, and you think, well, I think we can manage this. But then, of course, we're trying to do a deliverable, and then it takes some people off to fix bugs and so forth. And so you don't actually get some work. But on top of that, if we don't hire the people we need, to create the features we thought we could later on, then obviously that feature's not going to work on. And so that's when I say aggressive is yes, we try and be sensible about, how long will this feature take? And does it feel like there's some period of time? But if resources get reassigned because something that becomes more important, or we just don't hire the resources we thought we're going to, then those features then will get pushed back or drop out. And then sometimes, as I said, we'll just look at where we are. And I think that's one thing I'm actually really proud of in Cloud Imperium, is we actually don't just march relentlessly in one direction. I mean, we basically we go back, we look at the feedback we get from the community, we look at what's fun, what's working. The whole team really spends a lot of time checking out all the cool videos, looking at what people are really enjoying doing, and then we reassess and we sit down, and we like to be really agile about this and say, okay, no, actually, we're going to change direction here, because actually doing this and this and this is going to actually get us to a situation where people are really enjoying the game a lot quicker than if we just carried on. And what you would sometimes do in a traditional thing is you try and get a bunch of features in, and then you try and pull it all together, and then you'd really spend some time trying to polish it and just fix stuff and so forth.
I think that ability to reevaluate our progress every quarter, every half year, every year is one of the hallmarks of Star Citizen's development. I mean, famously, we started, when the PU development first started, we were pursuing the Terra system, for instance. And then we realized that the Stanton system would actually give us the vertical slice for everything we need in Star Citizen. So when we had that realization rather, a lot of people might have been too timid to switch gears at that point, but not us. We switched gears, and the results have yielded them.
We get the information, we make the right decisions for this kind of stuff. You know, is it painful sometimes because, you know, no one likes letting people down, but then I do feel like because of what we're doing, we actually are going to get to where everybody wants to be much faster because, you know, work to end goal of having this incredible experience, you know, in this huge persistent universe, as well as actually really helping Squadron really become an amazing, game.
Okay. You mentioned Squadron. At the end of last year, we released the Squadron roadmap. How has that process affected the Star Citizen roadmap? There's things that appear on Squadrons that don't appear on Star Citizen.
So you know, as I mentioned on the resource side, the one thing we're as a company really focusing on is making sure we push Squadron and to get Squadron out as soon as possible. You've seen the roadmap, working very hard towards that. It does mean, however, though, that resources that we would have used on the PU now plug areas in Squadron where either there's a shortage of resources or let's say, you know, one or two people leave, then basically we then use resources from the PU onto Squadron to make sure that basically we are going full speed ahead with that. In terms of what it means to Star Citizen is we kind of, one thing we wanted to do is we obviously have this focus on making it fun, and we want to keep on doing that. So we're keeping up the polish on, you know, the user experience and all that kind of stuff. But it means that a few of the features that we may have planned to do on the PU get pushed back slightly, some slightly, some a little bit more, while we then focus our PU resources on making sure that it's a fun experience, it's fast, and so forth. And then we look at what Squadron's working on, and as the features come online with Squadron, we then take those features and move them to the PU. So then we sort of get led slightly by, you know, cool sort of features in Squadron. They come on, we use them in the PU where we can. And then also the other side of it is because we do have a lot of people still working on the PU, but a lot of those people are working on stuff like, you know, making sure persistence is really getting there, because that's the big thing. Is we want to get to the stage where people load into the game and they start and then that's it, and then they're playing their characters and there's no resetting. So the persistence, getting the economy working properly, really getting this sort of proper economic system working there. So when you go to places, it's like it's on supply and demand. That's work that's going on right now, and also with that, the side of the degradation, all that kind of stuff that goes with it, as well as obviously the big one for us, which is when I feel the game's going to be ready for prime time, which is when we get the server meshing in, when we can put a bunch of people in one system.
It's one of those things I think that gets lost sometimes, even with 500 plus employees spread around 5 studios around the world. And you mentioned hiring and still upscaling those teams. There's still a finite amount of resources. You can only work on so many things at any given time. And there's this constant juggle between priorities. You know, working on this and this thing is a prerequisite for this thing. You know, all these dependencies. It's quite a juggling act. And
it's huge. And also, we're not. I mean, the quality level that we require to work on this game, and that we expect, and we won't. We won't hire people unless they're at that level is very high. And so you finding those special people, around the world to come and work at the studio takes a lot of time to bring them in, get them in, and then get them used to the engine, and then also get them working productively as well. So you sometimes you set like, I think we can find a couple of these people a month and so forth. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes a busload come through in one load. Not very often, unfortunately. But the point is, this sort of happens. And so we are, in terms of what we're doing, we've got loads of, lots of work to do. We've got, a large amount of open headcount to try and fill, get this stuff. And so so every day we're making decisions, calling priorities, and how we're going to use that.
So a big part of your responsibilities here is coordinating these production teams around the world, keeping development on schedule and whatnot. Famously, Star Citizen originally said, release 2014. We're in 2019. Why is it taking so long?
I mean, I answer this question a lot. I mean, basically, when the scale of what we were trying to do at the beginning, and what Chris was trying to do is very different. And I mean, the main driver of that was actually was because of the amount of backing support we got from the community and the amount of the, people really want to, have that amazing sort of, not only like the sort of Squadron sort of, single player experience they had with Wing Commander, but also with on the Pacific, from the big universe they could live in. As it became very evident quickly, that there was a massive support in that, and also and a huge amount of money came in to support that. It just became very obvious that we weren't going to be building the game that I think Chris thought originally, where he was going to do something which would be much more kind of like the old sort of school stuff. Obviously nice story and so forth, but not the sort of full first-person dynamic universe. I mean, we didn't even talk about the planets and the procedural text, all that kind of stuff, which now is in the game and people are loving and stuff like that. And it becomes it's a matter of trust. I mean, because if we believe that every single penny that comes in is going to be spent on development, and that's what we want to do. We build this incredible experience, and it just became obvious that we need to build something, to support something that is going to be groundbreaking and change the way I feel, change about games in the way and not only how we funded it, but how we built it and everything like that and so forth and that level. So it just came to a realization that we had to basically go and make something better now. What comes with that is you can't just suddenly go, oh, okay, well I'll just we'll build a few more ships, or we'll do this over here. You actually structurally have to then change the way that all the tools and tech work. And that was what happened very early on, is we said, right, well, if we're going to support doing this, we're going to make this incredible first-person universe, which you're going to do all these different things. You need to then go in and really then spend a bunch of time doing all the work which the community sat through with us. I mean, the guys, people know we went through and changed the physics system. We went to, we got the local physics grids working, which was a big, huge deal. We changed to 64-bit. I mean, the thing is, you probably forget, but there's been so many huge things. And then, of course, then the object container streaming came in last year as well. And you've got all this work that goes on behind the scenes that you need to do because you can't just do something and say, okay, it's kind of ready, and then when you want to get more dynamic and make it better, it just won't work, it won't scale. The only way you can make it scale is by having the underlying technology and the tools to support that. And so we basically said, all right, screw it, we're going to go and invest in the tools, in the tech, we're going to do this work. And the beautiful thing for me now is it's paying off. And there's been, as you said, a few years people have stuck with us. Yeah. But the beautiful thing is, because of all that work, now we actually fundamentally, pretty quickly now, and I think people can see it now for the quarterly releases. We're getting more content out. We're going to get the feature stuff, and you can see how the game moves along. And it's not just a normal experience. It isn't like a cool, sort of like old school, sort of like space combat simulator. It's like something which is completely immersive. It's a huge world. You can see how it's all going to come together.
I think it was very easy to see somewhere around mid 2016, quarter 3 2016. We definitely hit content phase. Like we had built, we weren't done building tools by any means. We're still building tools to help us make the game. But we got to a point where we could really start cranking out a game, an actual tangible game that people would play, and the experience that you see on YouTube, on Twitch, whatever, a Mixer is vastly different today than you saw just a year ago.
And it goes to Squadron as well. It's the same thing. It's like when you make those choices, then the same technologies in Squadron as in the persistent universe, and so I'm sure there's the same discussions about, well, Squadron has been delayed as well. It's the same deal, is you've got to get the technology, you've got to get the tools and stuff to make that sort of work. So even though we went through and and early on actually had a bunch of the missions working, once we actually went and changed up a lot of the tools and tech, we actually went and then revisited those things and actually remade them.
We're here to talk about the Star Citizen roadmap, but you mentioned Squadron 42, so I have to take the opportunity. How is Squadron doing?
No, I mean, it's going really well. I mean, we've got they've got their roadmap. We're focusing the resources on it. There's always going to be the odd issue and stuff we go through, but basically, we as a group, we meet 2 times a week. We look at the progress on a general basis. I mean, everyone company, watch that kind of stuff. And then it's just about really working through all the issues, trying to get obviously there's artwork coming in, and then getting that sort of artwork through, working through the AI issues we have and so forth to make it look better. It's like, as you see, and the great thing is, like we talked about before about, as we're following what Squadron does, as the AI gets better with Squadron, also people will then start seeing that in the PU as well. in the different missions and so forth, because that's one of the main features we take across. And so, because I want to be in the PU, I'm not trying to change subject here, but in the PU, I want to have, when we have green zones, I want to be a green zone because there's a bunch of security there who'll shoot you if you do wrong things, not just like you can't use your weapon and so forth. Yeah. And that's the sort of things that'll start coming in over the next the next few quarters, where basically we have
those diegetic solutions.
It's
not
like
it's
not just
zone that you can't play
exactly.
in.
You just can't have your gun and so forth. It's got to be do you do a criminal act? Okay, these guys will come after you, and that's part of the law system that's going to start coming in as well. Over the next few quarters.
One more Squadron 42 question before we get back to the Star Citizen roadmap. Back in, forgive me if I'm wrong, I think it was 2015. Back in 2014, we said that Squadron 42 was all levels were in gray box. All levels were in gray box. And now with the publishing of the Squadron 42 roadmap, we can clearly see that many levels are not in gray box anymore. What happened there?
We went back in and redesigned them. I mean, simply. I mean, we had better tech. We had other things we wanted to do.
The procedural planet system came online.
I mean, exactly. I mean, there's so many different things and so forth, and we didn't feel like the levels were where we wanted to be, and so we went back and some many of the stuff and went through, and some of them were changed, some of them were moved around and so forth, but it was basically just a decision because Squadron is not coming out until it's literally the perfect game. I mean, this for me is I'm getting old in the tooth here, and this is my this is probably the last thing I probably will work on, and I know people like Chris and other people feel the same. Is when we do this, it's going to be absolutely amazing, and so if it's not right, then we're going to make sure it's right.
I think one of the things that I really enjoy in educating our backer community is that game development is not a linear line. It's not A to B to C to D to E all the way to Z and you're done. It is there are review gates. There are points where you go back. Most famously, I think one of the Metroid games just recently announced that they're going all the way back to the beginning. Starting over. We're not doing that by any means, but it's evident. It's a good analogy to the type of review and step back and reevaluate that happens in all game development. And so when Squadron was in gray box in 2015, that was the expectation.
It was a different game. I mean, that's what I'm saying. We went back, we looked at the tech, we looked at the support we had, and so forth, and we knew we were pushing it, and so we really looked at what we wanted to do. We changed up a lot of in terms of just the tools and the shadings and stuff, the way we do the art. There's a lot of different things we could do, so we want to change that up in terms of the characters, the way we do, the way we lit, and all that kind of stuff. How we want to make certain events play out, all those things have a big effect on stuff. So, and you either, we're not here to make something average. If it's not amazing, then it's not coming out of the studio.
I can't say it better. All right, so we'll go back to the Star Citizen roadmap here before I have to let you go. 2019. Let's look ahead. We've talked about all the considerations, all the work that we put into these roadmaps. What are some of the big ticket items we can look forward to in 2019?
Well, I mean, we're going to have new locations coming through. We have some in this quarter. I think also we're going to spend a lot of time on creating more detail on the planets we already have. We have cool stuff like tunnel systems coming along. We're going to have more locations in space, like places to visit. Sort of way stations and so forth, and also in terms of gameplay side and feature side, we're going to have obviously got a new flight model coming very soon, which is really exciting. It's going to be really cool. It's not only cool because it's just better in terms of just flight atmosphere and atmosphere and flying through space and so forth, the response, but it's actually another cool thing is it's a lot faster. So it doesn't. It's very quick, which means that actually it's a big performance win as well. So people should see that when they start looking at stuff, because when you've got especially when you've got a bunch of ships and they're all using a system, and that system's expensive, it all multiplies up. And this system's a much quicker and much simpler system. And the great thing about it is it's simpler to use for design as well, to get the work and the change they want to do out of it as well. We obviously have the female characters coming. We have the ability for characters to actually create their look and feel, their look in the game. And we're gonna, and then once again we'll be taking a bunch of features through from Squadron. Like I said, improved AI will be coming through. I mean, it's just there's a lot. I mean, it's like with this release of the roadmap, I have very much made sure and asked the team that what we put in there is what we can achieve with what we have right now. Okay. Specifically with also The fact that people may be pulled onto Squadron, and and we know that that the space links work. So this although there's a really good set of stuff in there, my hope is we'll be able to add some stuff to the roadmap. But what I've done this time rather than last time is the last time we said we think we can do this, we had it in the roadmap. This time we put in what we are pretty damn sure we can do.
Okay.
So I'm signing up for this. And then all we're going to do is now, hopefully, if we do build a team and get more people, then what we'll do then is we'll actually be able to add stuff to the roadmap. So for a bit of luck, then towards the end of the year, we'll be able to actually start adding stuff to the roadmap rather than taking it out, which would be great.
So that sounds like a little bit of a change from what you said earlier, where you said some of the scheduling and the predictions involved staff that hadn't been hired
We
yet.
try and learn. So believe it or not, so we that we got aggressive. We did the stuff, and we said, well, this time let's just put it in the roadmap, which is people feel is completely doable. And then with what we have right now, and then rather than not sort of say, okay, yeah, but we should have another team built by this time, so we'll be able to get this in the future. And so my hope is we will get some of the teams going, and then that will actually be able to mean that we can push some more stuff in.
Gotcha. So when the roadmap is updated for Q3 and Q4 of 2019, it may seem less aggressive than it has in the past.
Yes, but I think there's loads in there. I mean, I'm not worried about in terms of there'll be lots of cool stuff for people to do. But my feeling is this is something that people should be able to go. I mean, unless we get to the end of Q2 and we take a look at it and go, you know what, actually we need to change direction, do this or change stuff around. I feel very comfortable with that roadmap because it's basically that was my explicitly wanted to say let's just get it there, and then like I said, I'd rather surprise people with some new stuff rather than disappoint them by taking stuff out.
Now, you mentioned surprising people with stuff. That's a good way to showcase that just because it's not on the roadmap doesn't mean we're not working on it, or that the roadmap is the sum total of what we're working on.
Yes, I mean, there is some stuff we keep off on purpose because we want to surprise people. We like to have one or two little things that go in there. There is a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes, which exactly as you said, is like I'd say right now, server meshing is a lot of the pre-land work is starting and we'll be working on through the rest of this year, even though it's not showing on this, although it's not showing on the schedule right now.
It's not showing Q4.
It doesn't mean work isn't going on, and it doesn't mean that there might not be some early versions we may be able to get it some sort of, there's a lot of longer term features that we're working on in terms of optimizations as well, in terms of that kind of stuff which are going on all the time, which may not show there. And then once we get comfortable that they're coming to fruition, then at that point, we will plug them into the roadmap.
We did this roadmap 2 years ago, and we've evolved it and iterated on it last years. And now we've seen many game projects out there doing similar things. And it's very, it's because if I can have an opinion, I think it's a great idea. But it's very easy to look at it and think that that's all that you're working on.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely not the case. There's so much more. It's just that's
these
what we think
these
is
are
gonna
more
really
sort of rounded. I mean, typically it's the more rounded features that we feel people understand, and also like this is a feature release here, this is a piece of content here, and so forth. But there's a huge amount of other work that's going on under behind the scenes also, which sometimes we don't put on because we're not sure it's going to make it, and then we'll make the decision to put on later. And like I said, some of it we're going to keep because we'd like to keep it a surprise. On that sort of level. So yes, but it's really important that people understand there is a huge amount of other work going on there.
So going back to the two roadmaps, the Squadron 42 roadmap and the Star Citizen roadmap, there are shared features, but they don't always align. Like you'll see a feature being developed for Squadron first and then coming to Star Citizen later on, or vice versa, coming to Star Citizen first and then being implemented in Squadron later. Why that disparity? Why is it not just the same time?
I mean, the main reason is the difference between single player and multiplayer. So having a system having a system which works, for Squadron, which is a single player game, and we'll have a multiplayer element of it that people will be able to play. But it's basically that's what it is, one big story. Which is single player, is getting that working is usually much faster, and also the specific needs that Squadron has. It's a military game, so it may be a piece of technology which is military technology, which we may not make available in the PU straight away, and so forth and things. So that's the main one. Is like stuff like AI. When AI works for for Squadron, then you can get it with the PU, but you need to make sure that all the network calls are in there and so forth and stuff. And so that's the kind of stuff you have to make sure that the proper stuff's going on. And so basically, when in single player, the AI is standing over there because it's on your client, if I'm playing multiplayer, do me and you see the same AI? If
Far more variables.
Exactly. If the callbacks aren't going to the server back to us and so forth, then you don't know. So that's the main reason.
Besides the roadmap, one of the really cool innovations that we've implemented in Star Citizen's development is the use of our Evocati test flight. Our deputized group of quality assurance testers around the world, all coming with different skill sets, all coming from different locations. They can test a variety of things that we can't test internally. How has that affected our development? How do you plan for that?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's a blessing because we have actually quite a large internal test department, but not as big as some. But they cannot manage, the amount of tests we need to do, and not just the Evocati, who are fantastic, but also when everybody joins the PTU, and we get that massive surge on the servers. And I tell you, sometimes we think the game's stable, and we've gone through Evocati, that feels pretty good, and then we just go to a big open PTU, and then everything just falls flat. And I know, some of the guys have been and seen that. It's having that is an amazing resource to work with.
Scale is the one thing you can't test.
Exactly, and so having people there who are willing to come in and help us do that is brilliant. I mean, and Evocati, and especially, and what's really great on the Evocati side is because they're actually willing to get in when the game's, let's say, slightly more broken than usual.
Yes.
And so, or test like some feature stuff, which actually interesting is one of the things we're actually going to do this time around as well, is we're going to give Evocati, with the flight model, we're going to basically open up to Evocati probably a number of weeks before we even go into proper testing, just so they can go and fly and give us feedback on that, because we want as much we don't, because the new flight model's going in, so we don't want to have we want more time with it,
right,
and we want more feedback. And if we put it in for the last 4 weeks and stuff like that, then we want to make sure it's balanced well, because this is a big new thing. So that'll be kind of cool. And that's the great thing that Evocati does again as well, is like they're going to go in there, we're going to give them a drop with a bunch of the flight model stuff, and they're going to go fly it, and we can get their feedback, and we'll be able to tweak on that. So by the time it gets to the mass of people in the PTU, then it should have had a good few number of changes with suggestions from Evocati to help us do this. But without that group, I mean, it would make our jobs very, very difficult. I mean, close to impossible. Because you don't release a game this size with this many people with about 60 internal QA guys spread over over these regions and so forth. And so we're just incredibly lucky to have the support we have.
And I'm going to add, for those who may be hearing the term Evocati for the first time, the way that, and wondering how you can join it, it's through use of our Issue Council, which is our big QA platform where our backers can find bugs, submit bugs, verify the bugs submitted by other backers, and help us narrow down the sources of bugs that crop up during the course of development. So you mentioned server meshing. This is one of the last big technical hurdles towards making the Star Citizen Precision universe everything that we all dream it can be. Talk to me about server meshing. What is it, and how important is it?
So
I know, pretend I don't know.
I mean, basically, the server meshing is going to give us, basically, on a nutshell, it's going to give us the ability to put everybody in one instance. And what happens is rather than have one server, because right now we have a server which basically controls, and we have about 50 people in one area, and that's about as high as we can go. We'll be able to get a bit higher once we do some more optimizations, but otherwise you get into problems with latency, and not so much latency, but the servers get so slow that basically it causes problems getting everything out. So the server meshing means that we will be allowed to dynamically have servers control anything from a room to a system, depending how many people are in there. So you can imagine, once we optimize it, and then a server can actually control a few hundred people, and we know that a few hundred people have all decided to go to a bar.
Right.
Then we can have one server that all it cares about a few hundred people in the bar. That's it. And that means that you suddenly get this big feeling of, we're all pushed in here, but the server's controlling that. As soon as you walk out of that bar, it transfers to another server, which is controlling the alleyway outside or whatever. And that's the way we basically get everybody in one stuff. And then they talk up to a system server, which then talks up to a big old database server and so forth, which then scales back. And so they go, there's 200 people over here. Let's put like 5 servers on that. There's only one person out here. Just one server for that whole system. And then it dynamically just scales how many servers controlled depending on how many people in there. And it basically and they basically use the power, jointly to basically try and get people in there. So that's kind of how the server meshing stuff works. and obviously there's levels of this. So that's where you want to go to. It's this beautiful dynamic system. It basically brings servers on and offline depending on how many people. It's very neat. It's very efficient. But at first, the first iteration will be, which is what at the moment we're in planning phase right now, and the work will start soon afterwards, and we'll be working on it this year. And I'm, and obviously, like again I said before, I'm not going to get into. This is one of the things that we're not going to talk about a date that will come live until we're closer. But the idea would be, is that once we have the first iteration, which would be actually we now have the servers talking to each other. They're not dynamic, but we have like, a server is going to manage this area space, the server will manage this area space, the server will do this planet, the server will do this location, and then all of a sudden when you've done that, then you can get a bunch more people in. And so the first test for me, and we'll be involving a lot of people, Evocati and PTU, is you start with that stuff. And so the first one is be more rigid. It's servers passing people to each other when they go through zones. That way we get loads more into an instance. And then that will be the first one we play. And then at that point, I think people will start having a pretty damn good experience, because we're not talking 50 people. You're going to be talking like hundreds of people playing together in areas then, or in one instance, and sort of systems, passing back and forth. And then the dynamic side will then be built on top of that as well. So it's a process.
I want to clear something up. You said, and then work will start on this. It's not that work. We haven't begun the work of server meshing. Things like OCS were precursors to this. Things like serialized variable.
I mean, all the work that we talk about and stuff has all been done to make sure this works. Without this, it doesn't work. Yeah. And so if you want to say server meshing work, it started 3 years ago. Right. I mean, this has been a plan along and so you have to do all these optimizations and make all these changes to code, and then as you said, object container stream is a big one, because the server stuff has to time with that, because we have to know what's been loaded in when, depending where you are, and all that kind of stuff as well. So all that work's happened. What's happening now is we're at that stage now where finally we can start. We're doing the last assessment, so we can actually start the implementation of actually the servers talking together for all this stuff, and then that is the process which is going to start very soon, which will start and we'll be working on this year.
You sure I can't convince you to give me a date?
No, and unfortunately, no dates. But obviously we'll push hard on it. But on that one, I just want to, once again, it'll be nice to have a surprise.
And of course, the public roadmap is where you're going to find information on the when and where of features in Star Citizen. Erin, thank you so much.
No problem. Good being over here. I'll be back again in 2 months.
When you come over here, do you dread like, oh, Jared's going to grab me for one of these things?
No, it's always lots of fun.
Well, I appreciate you saying that on camera. All right, thanks.
All right, cheers.
And that was Chief Development Officer Erin Roberts. Erin, thank you so much for agreeing to be kidnapped for approximately 45 minutes and answer my questions as you could. For the second half of our show, our first 2-in-1 special, we have members of our lore team here. We're already halfway through the show, so I'm going to skip past most of the normal intros. This is Dave, that's Adam, that's Will. We are taking your questions live from the chat. You can submit your questions for the lore team by submitting your question with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. That'll help our community team.
Question for the lore team for today's RTV and bracket, just to make sure we see it.
Yes.
Hashtag blessed.
Now, of course, the lore team, you touch many aspects of Star Citizen Squadron 42, but there's still only certain types of things you can talk about. So, as an example, lore-wise, when is the carrot coming out?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, Jared.
Yeah, obviously.
From a lore perspective, actually, it's been out for quite some time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure lore-wise, all of you are already flying your Carrack, so I hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Right.
Send us any feedback you have right away. We'd love to get some dibs on that.
So, when questions, gameplay, mechanic questions, those aren't going to be the types of things that we can talk about here. You are the DNA of Star Citizen and Squadron 42, the backbone that everything else is built on, if I may.
Well, yeah. Very kind of you to say.
If I may. I really appreciate the work you guys do.
We're just one
And you too,
side
Adam.
of the power triangle of narrative art and design.
All right, so as the questions come in live, we did pregame some questions on Spectrum, where folks were able to submit questions and vote up which questions they wanted to see added
thank you
most.
for taking the time to do that. It's pretty awesome, and sorry for the people who didn't make the cutoff, but still appreciate reading through all of them.
Yeah, the most voted up one was a surprise to me. Like when we talked about this, we were like, okay, we had some ideas what we're going to come up with. I could not have predicted the most voted up question. The most voted up question was, we're going to jump right into it now. All the intros are done. Are there any natural disasters in Star Citizen lore, such as a tsunami, an asteroid fall, disease, insect invasion, and is it planned to have them in game as a dynamic event?
Historically, we have the Oratani jump point collapse, which is technically kind of a natural event, disaster too, because there are trapped people back there. I have to redouble check the history. I think we had talked about in the early days before we terraformed Mars that there was like a couple of natural disasters that happened on Earth.
Right.
That's sort of during the overpopulation era where it was like really starting to get dangerous.
But yeah, we've had massive clay dust storms affecting whole planets. We've had insect, like the cicada-like ones, which I'm forgetting the specific of.
It's in Oberon.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
They were brought there because a lot of the residents of Oberon lived in the passages underneath, and it was brought there as a food source. But it ended up turning into invasive species that has kind of wrecked that planet.
Tale as old as time.
And we do want certain planets to be riskier to travel on, and these kind of natural phenomenons will be a big part of that.
Disease too, we actually called out a couple of diseases, I think, in the sort of threats of pandemic and some of the news updates. I think it was like lynch fever or something like that.
Yeah, we were talking to the character team. This isn't to say this is in the works right now, but about the potential down the road in the future of doing like shaders for when people have the space measles or whatever it is that we want to push forward, of being able to like turn that on your character so you can get sick that way, which is a fun potential for way down the road. But and then we showed a case like we had the dust storms in the Lear 3.
Yeah, the sandworm demo.
So that was our first kind of blush at like playing around with that as something that we want to include and have as gameplay. So
Yeah, I think it's very easy to say that we would like to have the dynamic events like these. Everybody remembers the plague that swept through World of Warcraft back when. We'd love to have those dynamic events. It may be too early in our development still to commit to them, but there's a lot of R&D.
And there's always that thing too where it's like we have that distinction between like what's happened historically and that doesn't affect the game, to set up kind of the background of the universe in which a lot of things can happen. But we always run that weird gambit of like not wanting to imply that some of the historical stuff could be in game, so we have to kind of ride that line.
Yeah, because we have a couple worlds that have had like bad terraforming where the terraforming hasn't quite like stuck all the way and they're having problems. So it'd be kind of cool to figure out how we can show that ongoing rather than just having the planet itself looking kind of messed up. Is that like an ongoing thing with like
Microtech had some terraforming issues.
Yeah. That's why it ended up so cold.
Yeah, and there's other ways too. Like there are certain planets also that may have suffered from drought, or just there not be an abundance of water there, which may be reflected in not seeing massive lakes or oceans on the planet, but also in being able to haul stuff in. So it might affect the economy in that way, where it's maybe not such a big thing, or this planet just doesn't naturally have a lot of water, but so you won't maybe necessarily see it directly in game, but it'll affect gameplay or how you want to run your routes or certain things
doing
like
those kind of relief missions and stuff like that would be really cool.
Yeah.
So the second most voted question was the one that I kind of assumed would be the first most voted question. It says, are the Vanduul the only major threat in the game, or will we see others?
I mean,
the biggest threat right now is me trying to land a plane.
Yeah.
At a rest stop.
Yeah. Will on a landing zone is a very dangerous concept.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I mean, it feeds right into humans are a huge threat in the game because everyone's flying around with like massive weapons on their ship, willing to just like mess people up.
When we showcased the vertical slice for Squadron 42, I think one of the most surprising aspects of that was that there wasn't a Vanduul in sight. The antagonist of that level, at least, were humans, were other humans, people, the danger of people.
Yeah. People are strange.
It's like the Walking Dead. You think the zombies are the antagonists, but it's not. Oftentimes it's the people.
We're definitely focused a lot when we're talking about like what are you going to come up against is this idea of factions, a much smaller kind of plane. We have the Vandal as this big imperial level threat, and there isn't many things that come as that blanket level of scale, but there are the much smaller, more faction threats that you're going to encounter system to system and stuff like that. Like on the micro level, you have the Nine Tails operating out of Grimhex, and they're a major threat when you're in that area. And we're working on developing them more and how it's going to go and how you interact with the other gangs that you might run into while flying around Stanton. So as far as the introduction of another big group that's just going to swarm and cover everything.
The Borg in season 3.
Yeah, so we're not necessarily gearing up for that per se on a day-to-day mission scale. It's going to be more about getting your reputation and how you interact with these local factions. I think it's going to be a big thing.
From the live chat, in capital letters right off the bat, when will Tessa Bannister be back? I don't think we've had any one of you on any show where that question hasn't come up.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, again, I think I was on Ask
Calling All
Devs and talked about it because there was
Epson chat, please.
there's some technical considerations that are hampering Tessa's triumphant return. So I think it's a question of once we were able to address those, we will probably have a better sense of a timeline for her. But we all love her. We want to get her back. It's just a question of.
This is almost the first one was about threat. This isn't necessarily about threat, but in the same vein. During development and after, will we see new civilizations coming to the game, or are all the ones that we're going to have already present? It's hard to say that at some point in the future you may not decide to add and discover.
It's so tough for us to answer this because it's the kind of thing, if we did want to
Spoil
do
everything.
we would want it to be a surprise. That's not saying we are doing it or not doing it, but it's kind of like we don't want to answer.
Fair enough.
Sort of no comment.
Yeah, no comment.
Let's see. This has been a common question. I'm not sure we can answer this yet, but we'll go ahead and try. How much does the Squadron 42 campaign affect the PU? How much of it will be felt in the PU? Will there be memorials, museums? Will the coil make its way to the? That's more a game design question then. But I mean, are you building connective tissue between the two?
Well, I mean, the coil is a thing, that exists in Odin systems. So it's not, it's a locale. It's an environment, if you will.
So when you go to the Odin system in the PU, the coil should be there.
Yeah. As we kind of did when we did the CitizenCon a few years ago, I mean, there's the attack on Vega 2 will probably be reflective, that there will be remnants of that attack, rebuilding memorials, that type of thing.
It definitely is going to have an impact on the PU, and we have some fun ways on a smaller personal level how that's going to be reflected in your travels in the PU if you finish Squadron 42 and you go through the campaign, how that will change you, as well as kind of more of these universe empire-wide scale things of are the people in the game changed by the story in Squadron 42. So.
I'm pretty sure this question came from Tyler Wicken, and he's sitting here posing it as a member of the community. There's always at least one or two every episode. This is there any lore surrounding the addition of Hawaiian shirts and flip-flops?
Wow, that is a very specific question.
No, we're not even going to spend any time on that.
Moving on.
We know about UEE currency. Have we considered any other types of alien currency for the game?
Like Bitcoin?
Like Banu coin?
Yeah.
Like REC?
We've had that conversation before. I mean, the tricky thing is, right now we're trying to build the economy for
The human economy first.
The human economy, and because then you're talking about a completely separate economy on top of that. So
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about it. Obviously, it seems like it would make the most sense, but it's just a question of
Lore-wise, the Xi'an have their own currency they use. They don't use UEC outside of UE space, but it's more of a further design discussion because it impacts things greatly whether you as a player are going to be able to operate using the Xi'an currency. And the same thing with the Banu. The Banu have their own currency, and who knows what the Vandal will do.
Right. It's a good distinction between lore and game design. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure if it were up to storytellers, absolutely.
Like realistically speaking, of course,
realistically
it'd have
speaking,
to.
there'd be 100
Right.
different currencies out there
Yeah.
in the galaxy. But from the perspective of making a game and game design, that would be something
Yeah,
for our economy
the
team. out of
Banu are a
Boston.
trading species, so of course they have to have some kind of, I mean, unless it's purely barter, like they have to have some kind of currency.
Yeah, we've lore-wise, we've talked a bit too about how the Banu currency might be preferred on kind of the fringes as being a little more flexible and having a little more options to it versus the UEC, which is tightly controlled and regulated and traced every transaction.
From the live chat, any updates on the Galactopedia?
Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there have been certain pieces that are appearing in jump points, which are being done. So it's there are little deep dives.
You mean Jump Point, the monthly subscriber magazine available to all
Absolutely.
subscribers?
Yeah, it was a new feature that we introduced last year, I believe, when we started doing
this-
it.
We're on year 5. Yeah.
Yeah,
This past
it
year.
was last.
Yeah, it was a
there some last
2018
year.
It was in the
new
revamp,
edition.
yeah.
We started switching between Galactopedia entries and Whitley guide entries.
Yeah.
So those have been really fun, and hats off to Sherry for her work on those, as well as Ben, who's running all of the.
Yeah. But yeah, we've been sort of working on building up our sort of entries and trying to figure out how we want to tackle it. It's again, it's one of those things. It's like it involves decisions outside of our department. So we're trying to get our ducks in a row and get people kind of resources allocated for it. So it's a question of
We meet up with Turbulent a bunch on it, but they keep having bigger, higher priority projects, and it's all about balancing that backlog of tasks. So it's still ticking away in the background.
Yeah, and it's something we can slowly chip away at and just kind of start working on, and when it's ready to
Yeah, we're
go.
building it. We're actively building it on the
Yeah.
backside. When it's going to be accessible is the bigger question mark at this moment.
There's a question in chat about the lore builders. Back when we
Us?
began this project,
Very nice.
we published a series of lore builder kits. Were they called lore builders? Is that what
yeah,
they're
it was a news update. Yeah, it was a little bit.
Yeah, with kind of signposts and milestones to help fans develop their own lore for stuff. Do you remember those?
Yeah, yeah.
You mean
Or
the
like the
writer's
writer's
guide?
Writer's Guide. That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the name
right.
of it.
Okay.
They called it the lore kit in the chat, but or the
Oh
lore
yeah,
builder.
Yeah, the
Lore Builders
writers
was the thing we did. It was another feature we did where that was the more like we were sourcing kind of stuff with the community.
Like Saddleball was a big thing that
Saddleball,
came out of that.
we had alcohol.
Yeah,
like we got a
band
bunch of
names or
drinks
things
and
like that.
band
Well,
names.
Black Mountain Tea, that's in the game.
The question in chat was, is there anything for fanfic writers? Is there a light at the end of this fanfic
The
tunnel?
writer's guide, we have to do a pass, and it's been one of those tasks that's been sort of, I've been shuffling around for a year now, of having to just sit down and finally go through and kind of bring it up to speed. It's mostly still there.
The flavor of it is really still been the core guiding principle. I mean, I still go back. It's salty with a hint of heat. I mean, I still refer back to the writer's guide in my weekly writing, and it's really impressive how well it's maintained. But there's a couple more detailed, like little facts that
It
we
hits the
kind of-
broad strokes. So if you're sort of looking for a resource, it's probably a good place to go. I mean, the Banu stuff, like the alien culture stuff, we've dove a lot deeper into. But the sort of broad stroke things and even kind of how to approach them, writing them as characters, is actually still kind of holds true. So.
If someone wants to be nice and include a link to the writer's guide in the chat, go for it.
Or we could throw it in the description.
Yeah.
This person, I'll just get her into it. He goes, why does Stanton have such a small historical time frame? 30 years or so to build a city planet like ArcCorp? Come on! And destroy an environment for another Hurston? Get off yourselves. I added that last part.
Oh, that wasn't part
I added
of
that last part.
No, we will get on ourselves.
So what's the deal here? 30 years to cover a planet entirely in city?
Yeah, I mean they're fast builders. Aggressive development. What can you say?
Well, remember, we also learned on last week's RT that there's no mountains or anything. So I mean, the planet wasn't just a perfect sphere formed naturally, was it? Maybe.
No.
Does that happen? Sherry? Not here.
Yeah, I mean it was. I'm trying to think of when actually we got into the nitty gritty of like when the system was discovered. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of it's definitely a weirdness factor of how quickly they've done it. I mean, the one thing we've kind of been saying, justifying it, at least to myself, as I cry to sleep at night, is that a lot of it's factory and production facilities, so it can be very expansive but not require a lot of people. It could, presumably at this point, because we're settling a lot of worlds, hopefully that like they've upped their game as far as like building, dropping outposts down and dropping factories down. Yeah, it's a little. I mean, again, yeah, the timeline's a little funky, but
I swear, half the time it sounds like you guys just make this crap up.
we do. That's our job.
That is officially. The expansion of it was a very hard, aggressive push by ArtCorp to cover it up, like to build out and build these things. We've talked about with Art about kind of the development of this world and how we're going to see it, and we go and as you've seen with the other moons, like it's a really awesome how much things keep improving and changing with it. So I'm looking forward to the release of the rest of the system and to see how it grows over the.
And also, to be fair, Hurston hasn't completely destroyed their environment. It's just they've really screwed it up.
And another point to add is that these planets are owned by the corporations itself, not technically the UEE. So there are no environmental regulations where you need to make sure there's a planning and you have a few years. You can just go and do whatever you want because that's their property.
Yeah,
so if you want to lean into that, we can lean into that.
It kind of fits with ArtCorp's personality that like they're super aggressive about getting people to move in there and set up like their production facilities and their corporate headquarters and all this stuff. So they're really like actively going out to try and get more people so they can make more money and assume them.
Chad is asking, what's all that loud background noise? It's lunch hour here, so the commissary is on the other side of that wall, and obviously there are a bunch of people having a very good time.
They must be loving this chat so much. They're just cheering on our answers.
I'm hearing dog barks, and it's a dog-friendly office, by the way. It's only Jay Lee. And if you're interested in working at such a fine and enjoyable place, you can go to cloudimperiumgames.com/jobs and look at all our job openings. I think there's like 100.
Tell them Jared sent you.
No. Trying to get hired. Don't mention it. All right, we are almost out of time already. Yeah, I know. It's going fast. Another feat to the fire here. He goes, if Idris frigates are named after solar systems, and you already know where this is going. And Stanton was discovered in 2903. How did the UES Stanton get its name if it was built in 2872? Time travel? I didn't ask that part yet.
Time travel?
Okay.
Yeah. What's the deal there?
Spoiler alert. No, I'm just kidding.
They rebranded it. They gave the ship a new name.
Yeah, it got resealed.
Yeah.
Right. Like the Enterprise A was originally the USS Yorktown. And
That is
when they gave it to
excellent
Kirk,
example. Yeah.
they renamed it to the Enterprise A. Yeah. I'm here for you guys.
There you go.
Let's see what more we can fit in before we have to let you go. What is the lore team's thoughts on all the action emergent gameplay going on right now at Jumptown?
Oh, it's fun. I tried to find it, I think last week, and ended up, I crashed into a mountain. So I was close. I was super close, and then I crashed. But no, I think it's awesome. I mean, it's one of the most exciting things to see people kind of like using the systems to build their stories, which is, really exciting.
Yeah, because part of it is we're providing this narrative backdrop for this stuff to happen on top of. So it's really cool to see the interplay between what we do and what the players do and how that all comes together to create this awesome drug war.
Yeah, and it adds that little bit of extra resonance too. It's like everyone's going there for the Widow, so it just kind of like deepens the connection to Widow as a part of the game versus just being some random supply or this commodity or this or that. So it's nice to see that be able to tie back through and to have people ganging up on both sides to make it happen.
I mean, I saw somebody like selling like escort services to get there. Like, I'll be your personal bodyguard to get there. I mean, it's really fun stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so we're just about out of time. I want to do some lightning round. Try to get as many questions in here as possible before we run out of time. How much room is available for players and orgs to make it into lore? Operation Pitchfork is already a part. Well, they got a skin in the game anyway. Do you guys ever look at that kind of stuff? Take an org, player org, make it a part of things?
So yeah, I mean, we've been sort of talking about like the sort of news aspect. I mean, we have the Reliant variant, which is supposed to be a news thing, and again, how we can kind of plug that into our news services in a way.
I think we need organizations fully implemented in the game first before we...
If we did incorporate organizations into lore, we want it to be based off like their actions and what they do. We don't want to like take control of your org and say this is what you're doing and establish your lore. So like Dave's saying with the reporting and stuff, this will be once we're going, you're going to do stuff, and that's how you're going to become part of the narrative.
You become part of the
game.
history by your actions rather than us kind of just going, we're going to grab that org and we're going to throw them in as blah.
Where is Sherry the Archivist? Probably in the commissary having fun with everybody else. How will different alien languages be handled when dealing with other humans? That's probably a game.
I don't understand.
I think, well, is every alien in the universe going to speak basic, or is there a universal translator, or?
There will be some translation stuff. They won't be as good. I don't think every alien is going to speak common by far.
Yeah,
like.
I mean, we're building the languages, so I mean, there will certainly.
That's right. We've got the Xi'an language. We working on any other hint? Maybe no.
Vandal.
Working on Vandal language right now.
And we're testing some other ideas.
For alien languages?
That are in Star Citizen.
Do aliens have pets?
Weren't flow pets like Xi'an?
I believe in, because we did a breakdown
called
of
out.
there's definitely Xi'an pets, because I think there was one that was called out in the name.
Right, right. A backer got to name it.
Yeah.
It looked like a little.
Yeah, and I was desperate to try and motion capture a pug because I wanted it to be a Xi'an pet.
I think Banu just have food that they're friends with for a while.
Until it passes. All right, that's about it, guys. I promise I have you out here at 1. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having us.
I know you guys have a trip ahead of you. You're heading to Europe to do some pickup shot.
For security reasons, they don't like us to disclose our travel plans ahead of time.
Fair enough.
Adam is staying here as the designated narrative team member.
You're the designated survivor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks, guys. That's it for this week's Reverse the Verse. Remember, there's that Cyclone commercial. I think that wrapped up today, or it wraps up at the end of the day. Check Spectrum for
Really
the,
amazing
for
stuff.
the
Good
specifics.
job, everyone.
Some follow-up information. If you check out yesterday's Around the Verse, if you haven't already, a lot of you folks are really excited about the ASL. I wanted to add one quick thing that while we're just as excited about adding ASL emotes, just to prevent everybody from going real crazy with it, we're probably not going to be able to have the entire ASL library of emotes in there. We are cherry picking. We are looking for the most valuable phrases to add in there. So take the spectrum and let us know what you think the most valuable phrases you would want in there, because we are going to have to curate a list, because there's only so many things that we can do with our time. And and for those of you waiting for the public roadmap, that is coming later today. I don't know specifically when. I've been in here for a while, but keep your eyes out. The public roadmap with updates to 3.6, 3.7, and 3.8 should be out later today.
And to everyone enjoying the private roadmap, thank you for keeping that secret.
Yes. Remember, the first rule of the private roadmap is that you don't talk about the private roadmap. Always a delight. Always a delight. All right, so for Reverse the Verse, that's Adam, that's Dave, that's me, we'll see you next week, everybody.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertsspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.